Hi there, my name is Jack Wallen and I'm here again with a Linux 101 video. This is the second time I tried to film this today. I was going at it a little while ago before I had to go off on run an errand, and it was going on really well, and battery ran out of my camera. Oh, the joys of technology. So here we are again. What do I have to talk about? Well, I was going to talk about a particular desktop environment today, but a couple days ago, I discovered something that I had never actually seen before in Linux. And that's kind of rare at this point because I've been dealing with Linux and open source for so long that I've pretty much experienced and tested and tried and used almost everything. And when I saw what I saw, which I'll tell you about it in a little bit, my first thought was, oh, this is really cool. I need to try this. And I have a lot to say about it. And I'm going to talk about it right now. What I want to talk about is Hyprland. Hyprland. It is a tiling window manager that works on Wallen. What's a tiling window manager? Well, I guess I better tell you that first. You might know what a tiling window manager is, and you may not. So if you know what a tiling window manager is, you can either just mute me or whatever. Tiling window manager. So here's how I'm going to explain it to you. Do you know what window snapping is? Most desktop environments have window snapping, be it Linux, Mac OS, or Windows. Essentially what you do, let's say you open up Firefox, and it opens up on your desktop in the normal way. With window snapping, you could click on the title bar and drag it to the left, and the window is automatically going to snap so that it takes up half of your desktop, the left half. Then you can open up, say, the Geary email client, and then you could grab the title bar and drag it to the right, and it's going to open up on the right half of the desktop. So you've essentially opened two windows and they're taking up exactly 50% of desktop, each one. So it totals up to 100. And then let's say you open up a terminal window and you want to snap that to the bottom right corner. So you click on the title bar and you drag it to the bottom right corner, and it's going to split the difference between Geary and the terminal. So you've got Firefox over here, Geary up here, and your terminal down here. And you didn't have to manually resize them because that could be kind of a pain. That's what window snapping is. Now, a tiling window manager kind of does that for you automatically. So let's say you're working with a tiling window manager. You open up Firefox and it's going to blam, it's going to open up in the full screen. And then you open up Geary, and then blam, it's automatically going to open up on the right side. So you've got Firefox on the left side, Geary on the right side. And you open up the terminal window, and it may, if you've got it configured right, it may open up in the bottom right corner. And you just keep opening up windows, and it's going to automatically place them in a space on the desktop for you. And it is amazing, and it's incredibly efficient. It is probably one of the most efficient ways of interacting with Windows on a desktop. And by Windows, I mean app Windows, not Windows, the operating system, because we're not going to talk about that. So that's what a tiling window manager is, and there are a lot of them. There's quite a few of them, like i9. Can't rattle off a bunch of others, but you know, you can Google it or DuckDuckGo it. So that brings me to Hyprland. So I saw a demonstration. I don't remember what I was looking for, but I saw a demonstration of Hyprland, a video that showed what it was, and I was like, oh wow, that's pretty darn cool. But I didn't know that it was a tiling window manager. The way what I saw described Hyprland was as a compositor. So I thought, oh, this is something that's going to compete with Wallen. Maybe it's like Wallen with just more eye candy, because that was the thing that drew me immediately to Hyprland. Was it had a lot of eye candy. It was pretty cool looking. And it stated, what I was reading stated that Hyprland can do more and be more. So I thought, oh, this is great. This is the next iteration of Wallen. And then I started looking into it, and eventually I realized, oh no, it's not a compositor, it's a tiling window manager. Okay. And I thought, well, let's install it and see what it's all about. So I first tried to, after reading about it, I realized, okay, well, everybody says, and even the official documentation says, try it with Arch, because it's better supported in Arch. So I installed it. I think I think you had to install it with Yay, I think. So I installed it with Yay, and then the end result just didn't work. It was like, oh, okay, well, or so I thought it didn't work. So I thought, well, okay, let's try something else. So I installed it on Ubuntu. Didn't work. Just didn't work. Then I tried Fedora. Didn't work. That's okay. In fact, well, one of the things I was installing on VirtualBox. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt when you're installing a distribution on a VirtualBox, because not everything's always going to work. Like when I tried with Fedora, I would try to log in and it would immediately kick me back out. So I realized I needed to enable 3D accelerated graphics, and then I got it to work, and then there was just a single window open and I couldn't do anything with it. So I scrapped that. I said, well, okay, there's got to be another way I can try Hyprland, because, you know, I need to try it because I want to review it. I want to talk about it. And then I found a distribution called Arco Plasma. Now, Arco Plasma is a spin of Arco Linux. And there's Arco Pro. I can't remember what they're all, but the default window manager for Arco is XFCE. But I thought, I prefer Plasma. Let's try the KDE Plasma spin of Arco Linux, and let's see if I can figure out how to do the whole Hyprland thing. Now, this is kind of a double dippy. Actually, it's a triple dippy video here. So I talked about Hyprland, and then I'm going to talk about this really cool distribution, and then I'm going to talk about something else in a little bit. So I downloaded the ISO of Arco Plasma and went to install it. And during the installation, it gave me two options. I could do the easy version or the advanced version. So I thought, well, I'm an advanced Linux user. Let's try the advanced installation. And that's when I realized how cool Arco Linux is. Because with this GUI installer, you pretty much get to choose everything. You can select which kernel you want, which window manager or desktop environment you want. You can, whatever applications you want. You can truly make this the distribution that you need. Now, I know you could do that with Arch Linux. You could do that with Gentoo Linux. But this one was just, it had a nice GUI installer that's pretty typical of Linux now. And so I got to the desktop manager section, and I could do KDE Plasma, I could do XFCE, but I could also do Hyprland. So I clicked Hyprland, I selected that, and I continued the installation. I got through it and I installed it. And it used the, I think SDD, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the login manager, not GDM. I think SDDD or something like that. So I got to the login prompt and immediately I thought, oh, this looks really good. This is really professional looking. And I logged in, and then Hyprland did its thing. And it was like, oh, what? Huh? Huh? What? How's the what? What the what? Well, there were two instances of the welcome app open, but they were really small. And then there was another app opened up here. And then there was another app opened up here. So and because I was in a virtual machine, I resized it as big as I could. And then I realized, well, I'm not sure. So one of the windows was the KDE keyring. You know, you set a password for the KDE keyring. So when you go to open the KDE keyring, which holds your keys and your passwords and all that, you have to type the default password for it. But if you've ever used a virtual machine, if you can't get the machine, the guest window open large enough, sometimes you have to sort of guess. So I would type the password, but I couldn't get to the OK button. So I hit tab, and I saw it move down to each different section. And then I had to guess, okay, is there a cancel or an OK? And how many tab hits does it take to get to the center of that particular lollipop? And then that's when I realized something really cool about Hyprland. It's like, oh, I can resize those windows. Because on most, I think I'm right about this, please correct me if I'm wrong, but most tiling window managers, you can't manually resize the windows unless you configure it so. So I was able to manually resize the windows, and even in the resizing of the windows, it was cool. Because the Hyprland is just really good at animations and visuals. It's beautiful. It really is. And so eventually I got the windows taken care of and closed and everything. I haven't really used Hyprland much because I had to go do something. I actually had something I had to do. So I saved the progress or saved the state of the virtual machine. I closed it. I'll go back to it. But my initial impression was, this is cool. This is a really cool tiling window manager. This is probably the coolest tiling window manager I've ever seen. Now, here's the third part of this video. And this is kind of an important part of the video, I think. Over the years, while covering Linux and open source, I have seen a lot of really cool projects come to be, make all these promises, and then get abandoned. Here's the best example of that I can offer. A number of years ago, Canonical developed something that looked like it was going to totally take over the tech industry and make Linux a household word. That was convergence. If you know enough, if you've been around in Linux enough, you know about it. Essentially what convergence was you have an Ubuntu phone and you plug that Ubuntu phone into a dock, which is like a keyboard, mouse, and display. And the Ubuntu phone switched from mobile mode to desktop mode automatically. It was so cool. It was amazing. Imagine you only need to have one computer, your phone, and it could function as your mobile phone or your desktop. It was so cool. Samsung's done it, other people have done it, but at the time, it looked like Canonical had the definitive iteration of convergence. On top of which, Ubuntu had the Unity interface, which was insanely cool. It was one of the most efficient interfaces I'd ever used, especially with the HUD, the head-up display, which you could hit the control key or the Windows key, whatever, the meta key, whatever you want, super key, whatever you want to call it, and you could navigate through an application menu system. So you open up the HUD and you could search. So like, let's say you've got LibreOffice open. You open the HUD and you type center. And you hit enter, and whatever text you had selected would automatically be centered. It was just super cool. And I seriously thought that Canonical they were finally going to make world dominance for Linux a real thing. But then they dropped it. Out of nowhere. It just vanished. They decided to drop Unity and go to a GNOME-based desktop that looked like the Ubuntu desktop. And it was so disappointing. It's like, oh, come on. We really liked this. But the other thing is they just couldn't get the Ubuntu phone right. I tested 2 different Ubuntu phones. They were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. So it just didn't happen. And I've seen other open source projects do the same thing. It's like, oh, you've got something really cool. Make it happen. And they drop it. So when I experienced the Hyprland window manager so recently, one of my first thought was, this is so cool, it's not going to last. And I wanted to reach out to the developers and say, please make this last. Please keep developing this because it's really cool and Linux needs this. And expand it and make it easy. Make it an easy tiling window manager that anyone could use. Because that's key to success in Linux. You make it, and you make it such that anyone can use it. So that anybody can understand why a tiling window manager is actually the best, most efficient way to interact with a desktop. And I really hope that this doesn't go the way of convergence. Because there are a lot of tiling window managers out there that nobody knows about. Because they're, most of the time, a lot of, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of those tiling window managers, they look like desktops from early 2000s. They're just ugly. Yes, they're efficient, but they're ugly. And I don't know about you, and maybe this is just me, but if I'm staring at a desktop all day, which I do, I don't want it to be ugly. I want it to look good. I want to have a desktop, a Linux desktop that I can have people look at and go, ooh, that's really cool. How do I get that? And then I say, well, you use Linux. That's how you get it. And they're like, well, what's Linux? You see what happened there? That cool desktop is a gateway to Linux. So you make people interested in what it looks like, and they might be interested in how it acts, how it behaves, how secure it is, how reliable it is. All those things that you and I know about Linux, and nobody else knows about Linux, they will finally understand. And it could happen just because of the Hyprland window manager. Who knows? So, if you want to try Hyprland, I highly recommend you look up Arco Plasma. A-R-C-H-O Plasma. I think that's what it is. Look it up. Download an ISO. When you're installing it, select the advanced option. I think that's what it's called. And then make sure you select the Hyprland window manager during the installation. Give it a try. Use it as a guest on your VirtualBox virtual machine and give it a try and see what you think. I have a feeling you're going to react the same way I did. That's cool. Linux needs that. And on top of which, even if you don't go with Hyprland, Arco Plasma is still a cool distribution. I mean, KDE Plasma is just awesome. It really is. It's not my default desktop, but it's still really cool. And you could essentially, during the installation, you could select both KDE Plasma and Hyprland, and then select whichever one you want during login. So do that so you have KDE Plasma to back up as a fallback. But you've got to look at this. You've got to look at both Arco Plasma and Hyprland. Super cool, super promising. You won't regret it. I don't have the URL for it, so just Google it or DuckDuckGo it, whatever. You won't regret it. You won't regret it. Because I'm going to look into it more. I'm going to do a review of it probably on Monday. So you can probably Monday, late afternoon, you could look up, you can go to ZDNet and look up Arco Plasma, and I will have reviewed it so you get a better idea of what it's like. And I'll probably mention Hyprland, probably have some screenshots of it and talk about that. So it's just really cool. And that's part of the wonderful thing about Linux and open source is there's so many cool projects. You could spend all day looking up cool projects on Linux, and you will find a lot of them. It's one of the best things about it. So that's what I wanted to tell you about today, even though it took me 2 tries to do it. Awesome. My wife is calling me. She's coming home, I bet. Anyway, thank you so very much for giving me a little bit of your time. I know it's precious. I hope that maybe you've learned something today, or I've piqued your interest in Hyprland and Arco Plasma. And if you're a developer of either one of those things, keep up the good work. I hope you and everyone you know and love have a wonderful, wonderful day.